Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the latest Maven webinar based on the highly relevant topic of investing in the circular economy. My name is David Nixon, Senior Investment Manager at Maven within the Northeast, and I'll be your host today. Our agenda is primarily focused on understanding the circular economy, and what better way to do this than to speak directly to a business leader who is at the forefront of operating in this sector. So our main event today is about 10 minutes from now, hopefully, will involve me handing over to Jonny Catto, who is Managing Director of Gateshead and Durham-based sustainable packaging manufacturer and a Maven investee business, iPac. Before this point, though, I'm going to run through a brief introduction to Maven, who we are, what we do, alongside providing a brief introduction to an investor's view on investing within this sector. So, who are Maven? Well, we're one of the UK's leading and most active alternative asset managers, which in plain English means that we're a leading investor within the UK SME market. Looking to provide capital to back exciting business owners and management teams in executing business strategies and realizing ambitions of stakeholders. We're also a regional investor, so with over 100 staff operating from a wide network of local offices across the country. And we have a strong belief in having local investors investing in local businesses. We also provide a wide range of funding opportunities and manage several funds that allow us to structure a variety of different transaction types, from growth capitals to MBOs, using any instruments from debt to equity and everything in between. But outside of a high-level overview, what do we really do? Well, simply put, we're looking for exciting and entrepreneurial business owners at all stages within the business life cycle who have exciting plans and are looking essentially for rocket fuel to execute their ambitions. We're not sector specialist investors. We are SME investors who find working together collaboratively alongside founders to generate stakeholder value is the best way to deliver and monetize growth and returns for all parties. Maven provides funding from four sources primarily. Now, the eagle-eyed viewers will note that there's only three here on screen, and that's because one of these is property investing, and I am not professed to be a specialist property investor, but Maven is a leading property investor. So rather than mislead you on this topic, I'll simply say if you want to discuss property finance, please get in touch with us, and I will direct you to one of our highly experienced property partners. The three SME funding pots that we do have available to invest allow us to structure debt and equity investments ranging from 50k right up to 20 million plus large buyout type deals. Given we have a big focus on backing entrepreneurs, we're one of the UK's leading VCT investors. So we do look to support young and dynamic companies with checks up to 5 million. But we also have a big focus on our regional model, where we can also use our local expertise, boots on the ground, to help deploy regional funds such as the North East Development Capital Fund or the Finance Durham Fund, where we provide growth capital to local SMEs alongside supporting local companies with larger event-driven finance deals from our MBO funds. So why Maven? Well, I won't talk to this slide in detail, but what I will say is that if you're looking for an experienced and flexible local investor to work alongside you in executing your business and personal strategies, creating value for your company, staff, value for your local area, communities, if you're looking for somebody with a solid grounding in the importance of doing things in the right way and understanding the impacts of social and environmental stakeholders, then please reach out to us and have a chat with myself or one of my colleagues within Maven. So onto the circular economy. I thought I'd start off by providing a brief introduction to the topic with a classic "what is" slide. So what is the circular economy? At the highest level, it's quite simply delivering macro and micro level economic growth and returns, but in a sustainable and responsible manner, or the decoupling of the ages-old straight line formula of consuming resources to get growth and replacing it with a more perpetual renewable resources delivering growth, that provide better outputs for society. So how is this achieved? Well, three principles: design products and processes and production techniques that reduce waste and pollution, design clever products and services that last longer, can be reused, recycled or upcycled. And the end result of this is not only will you be better for your company, but it will also be better for nature and by proxy, given we all live on the planet, better for all stakeholders. So people have talked about the circular economy, or the ability to recycle, reuse and reduce consumption whilst continuing growth for many years. And it's not a new hot off the press topic, but it is one, and rightly so, that is garnering increased attention. And this is primarily due to recent advances in technology that are now allowing us to not only plan for a circular economy, but also execute on these plans. And the important word here is profitably. So what are some of the technologies that we as an investor are seeing that's helping driving that? Well, the ability for machines to communicate more quickly and effectively together via the Internet of Things, allowing real-time tracking of resources and consumption, allows for efficient resource allocation, which equals predictive maintenance, improved product performance, machine performance, all of which save time, reduce waste, and improve efficiency. Blockchain provides a secure and transparent platform for tracking and verifying data, create digital records, digital certificates for materials and products, ensuring traceability, compliance, which increases trust and speed in supply chains. Artificial intelligence, which is certainly a key topic, has the ability to analyze vast tracts of data, identify patterns, optimize processes, creating new methodologies that help improve efficiencies. Software platforms, so specifically the growth in software as a service, for example, helps democratize access to specialist services and tools to wide ranges of SMEs, where previously they may perhaps will have been inaccessible when left in the hands of human experts. That allows them to create new methods and act efficiently. Renewable energy is a growing resource, such as wind, which now accounts for a sizable proportion of the national grid, and solar power. And all of this growth reduces our reliance upon fossil fuels to power growth. Recycling technologies, including mechanical, biological, chemical processes that are being developed to ensure as much recycled material in our supply chain than at any other time in our history. And that's something I know Jonny will be able to talk about shortly, alongside the uses of renewable energy. And also tools such as 3D printing democratize access to complex design and products at a cheaper scale than perhaps when you're relying upon larger supply chains and perhaps overseas supply. So why do it? Why invest in the circular economy? Well, the beauty of embracing these technologies and moving towards more sustainable supply chains, productions, processes, and consumption is ultimately better growth and better output for all stakeholders. This is the true end goal, because if executed correctly, utilizing circular economy methods can often lead to better margins, better resource usage, reduced costs, and more profits. Ultimately leading to better social outputs, better environments to encourage growth, better company reputations, better social reputations, as well as improved well-being and fully engaged and ultimately, happy stakeholders. So we Maven have been investing in the circular economy for several years now, and on this slide, I've just outlined a couple of the investments, that we've done, which help drive investment within the sector. I won't go through this in detail. I'm about to hand you over to the main event, Jonny, who can talk you through how iPac have benefited from funding, and specifically how iPac have been able to drive profitable and sustainable growth at a good level, whilst maintaining their foothold within the circular economy. So Jonny, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks for the introduction. As David said, I'm Jonny Catto, Managing Director at iPac Packaging Innovations, and we're a manufacturer of recycled plastic packaging for the food and pharmaceutical sectors. Just to give you a quick overview of the business, we set the business up in 2017, and we set up really as a challenger to the big thermoforming groups in our sector. And we set up with a huge focus on quality, innovation, customer service, and really importantly, sustainability. Just to take a snapshot of the last 6 or so years since we set the business up here in Gateshead in 2017. And we went into our first full financial year, 2018, with 2 machines, 10 people, and an annualized turnover run rate of about £1 million. And if you fast forward 5.5 years to where we are now, we're now 77 people with 8 production lines across 2 sites, producing about 400 million units per year, which equates to, for us, an annual turnover run rate at the minute of about 22 million. And along the way, as you know, David, Maven have been an important part of that. So we first raised funding with Maven in early 2019, and that was part of what then felt like a really big growth spurt into kind of summer of 19. So we raised some debt finance with yourselves, which helped to drive that growth spurt. And again, in early 2022, we raised a mix of mixed debt and equity funding, which again drove that big growth spurt through 2022 and what we see into 2023. I mentioned there sustainability is a huge part of our offering, and I mean, as you mentioned there, there's several pillars to sustainability. If we focus purely on the environmental pillar of sustainability, specifically with relation to the products that we make, as opposed to necessarily how we make them, if you go back 25 years within our industry, what you had was a very linear supply chain model. And I've shown there on this slide actually two linear models which would run in parallel. So it's the supply chain for thermoformed trays, which is what we make up the top, and the supply chain for PET plastic bottles down the bottom. So within our industry, the main material inputs back then would have been virgin PET from the petrochem industry. What our industry has always been pretty good at is recycling its own waste, you know, within thermoforming and extrusion, so use of edge trim and things like that. But the main material would be virgin. So you'd have sheet made mostly for virgin PET, and you'd have secondary packaging such as boxes and bags. Thermoformers such as ourselves would make trays, which would be shipped to food packers. Secondary packaging would become waste. Trays would be filled and shipped on to retailers, where there'd be more secondary packaging waste, and then ultimately the tray would end up at the household level as waste in the general waste bin. Also additional tray waste at the retailer end, where food passes its sell-by date and ends up in the bin. Alongside that, down the bottom, you then have the supply chain for PET bottles, so soft drink bottles. Again, products being produced through here, injection molding, blow molding, but ending up with secondary packaging waste at pretty much every stage through the supply chain, and ultimately the bottle ending up as waste at the household level and ending up in landfill or being incinerated. If you move forward to the early 2000s, which is on the next slide. So in the early 2000s, the industry took a pretty major step forward in partially closing loops, so getting to what you might call a semi-circular economy. And this is where the recycling infrastructure around plastic bottles took great steps forward. And what happened was post-consumer bottles were now being recycled and fed into the input channels for the thermoforming industry. So you still had a relatively linear bottle supply chain, so bottles would still be made from virgin material, but at end of life, where those bottles would end up in a recycling bin, they were coming back in to feed the input channels for the thermoforming industry. You'd still probably have, you know, quite a lot of waste streams at each step through the supply chain, but as I say, it was a good step towards what you might call a semi-circular model. So where are we getting to now in 2023? On the next slide, we've got a depiction of where we're getting to in iPac, but also as an industry on a whole. So as iPac, if we drop down to the next slide, we currently have a lot of products going into the retail supply chain, which are 100% recycled. So we've got a range of 100% recycled PET trays, which use absolutely no virgin material at all. They're made from a mix of post-industrial, so waste from the thermoforming and extrusion industries, combined with post-consumer waste with absolutely no virgin coming in from the petrochem industry. We have a big range of trays in prevented ocean plastic. So prevented ocean plastics, it's a fantastic program run by Bantam Materials, whereby bottle waste is collected from developing countries, mostly Indonesian islands, where a combination of high population growth mixed with tourism has resulted in a huge increase in the consumption of plastic, but actually there's no real recycling infrastructure to deal with the waste. So these are coastal and coastal communities or areas close to waterways where plastic waste has no collection facilities, and ultimately it's likely to end up in waterways and the ocean, and at best will continue to litter those waterways and coastlines. So through the POP program, over the last year or so, we've incorporated about 200 tons, which is the equivalent of over 25 million bottles, back into the UK supply chain for thermoformed trays. And we're working on several projects. In fact, we've successfully launched several projects with customers around getting reusable secondary packaging into our supply chain. So we're really taking huge steps forward to a model where, on a global level, we're bringing in post-consumer waste from countries that don't have their own recycling collection facilities. We're utilising UK post-consumer waste from end of life. So that's household recycling bins, whether it's bottle waste or indeed tray waste. So post-consumer trays, which are becoming a bigger part of the equation, and bringing those materials back from end of life into our supply chain to really drive the circular economy. We've successfully launched programs with customers around returnable packaging instead of single-use cardboard packaging, so packaging that comes back to us and gets used again and again. We've actually got a live project now to try and expand that. We've also got a live project around trying to replace single-use shelf-ready packaging at retailers. So that's where products actually sit within a plastic tray. So individual trays will sit within another tray on shelf, but that tray is ultimately single use. And we've got a current D&D project around designing thermoformed permanent fixtures to eliminate that plastic waste stream as well. And finally, we've worked with customers and recyclers to help capture secondary packaging, such as flexible bags used in the supply chain, and get them back into the recycling infrastructure in the UK. Jumping down to the next slide, what I've given here is an example of two trays which might to the consumer both be plastic trays, but I think this is a depiction of a tray that can help drive that circular economy versus one that might not, with the important takeaway here being that not all plastic is born equal. So on the right, we've got a blue polystyrene tray. It's polystyrene. It's which is a material that's not easy to recycle. It's coloured, so it's, even if it were easy to recycle as a material, the fact that it's coloured makes it very inconvenient to sort and get back into a supply chain for new trays. Because the end product is difficult to recycle, what that means is there's not a widely available recycled material feedstock, which means that as new trays are manufactured and supplied, they have to be made from a very high percentage of virgin materials, in many cases 100% virgin, so no recycled content going in at all. And again, the end product is difficult to recycle and therefore won't be collected. On the left-hand side, you have an iPac tray. This particular one's one of our iSorb range trays. So it's made from clear mono PET, which means it is exclusively PET, no laminates or adhesives on it, which makes it very easy to recycle. The recycled content as a standard for our trays is about 85%. As I mentioned, we do have ranges going into our supply chain that are 100% recycled content, but as a standard will be around 85%. The tray includes 30% prevented ocean plastic, closing that loop globally, as I mentioned, and the ultimate output is a tray that's 100% recyclable, widely recycled, easy to collect, sort and recycled, and so it's likely to come back around the loop again. So that just shows a few of the areas of focus around how we try to achieve circularity and what we do currently. So we've designed for recyclability. We remove anything that would make a product difficult to recycle. So we eliminate difficult to recycle colors and laminates. A good example is our mono skin product, where we've formulated a material that allows vacuum skin packing without the need for laminates, which make the tray more difficult to recycle. We apply design and innovation to eliminate non-recyclable components such as soaker pads, and the best example there is our iSorb tray, which was on the previous slide. We include optimized levels of post-industrial and post-consumer waste, with our trays containing anywhere up to 100% recycled content and 85% as standard. We include ethically sourced materials into our supply chain, which have a positive environmental and societal impact. Best example there being prevented ocean plastic. We minimize material usage through design and innovation, so designing products to lightweight, to design a stronger tray so that you need to put less material into the product to achieve the same strength. A great example is the olive pots that we have going into the retail sector, where our olive pots, compared to any of the other comparable trays on the shelves, are approximately 25 to 40% lighter, meaning that you need fewer raw materials to achieve the same ultimate product. And outside that, outside the actual product and material themselves, we ensure that our operations are as green as possible. So through use of renewable energy sources, investing in energy efficient equipment, and in energy saving equipment, reducing waste to landfill, and maximizing the amount of site waste that gets recycled, and closing our loop on water usage, minimizing water usage, and several other schemes such as electric vehicles and what have you. So that's what we do today and where we are now, and just looking to the future and what that holds. I think for us the next few years is definitely around continuing on our mission to really close that loop, to expand some of those programs across various ranges, and to continue what we do in research and development around product design and material formulation to really drive and improve that circularity, and that includes looking at emerging and nascent materials such as bios. There are certain areas where bios actually make circularity more difficult, but we had an R&D program where we've come up with our own bio that does have its own niches where circularity is hard to achieve for other reasons. Then use of biomaterials does have its place in the market. So we're actively looking at areas like that. Across the industry as a whole, there's tray-to-tray recycling is coming along in leaps and bounds. As I mentioned in the early 2000s supply chain example, that was very much a bottle waste coming back into tray recycling, come back into the tray industry. Where we are now is taking big steps forward in tray-to-tray, so really increasing the numbers of trays that are coming back into the industry from end of life. And finally, what the next few years hold, I think, in a big way, is exploring the power of data. So we've recently linked in with a really exciting tech company called Scrap Recycling, and this is all around how we can use data and technology and work with customers and retailers across the entire supply chain to really capture end-to-end life cycle data, and use technology to drive behavioral change through education, as well as being able to capture the data and drive the right behaviors there through the use of technology. So that's iPac and our position in the circular economy around PET.
Great, thanks, Jonny. That was really useful. I think specifically, I think given that the food chain and food consumption is such a big part of all of our lives, it's great to see just how far advanced we've got in moving this really important supply chain into a sort of more sustainable and circular market. Using I like innovations such as maybe that aren't obvious, but making like products and innovative supply things such as prevent ocean plastics. I think these are really great initiatives and really great products. We're going to move on to a little bit of a Q&A session now, Jonny. Just a couple of questions that have been submitted to us for you to answer, but I've got one first actually, which is just within the manufacturing arena that you operate in. How long do you think it would be before you can get to be 100% recyclable in the supply chain?
So I mean, our products are 100% recyclable. I think sometimes at the consumer level, there's that confusion between 100% recyclable and 100% recycled. So our products are 100% recyclable. As I say, we eliminate anything that makes them unrecyclable. And beyond being 100% recyclable, our focus is around making them easy to recycle. So there are plenty of products out there that are technically recyclable, but they're difficult to recycle. So the reality is they're either not commercially viable to collect and recycle because they're difficult to sort. Things, and we're talking here, I mentioned colors. So we'll eliminate anything that not only makes things unrecyclable, but anything that makes things difficult to recycle. So our products are 100% recyclable. I think the other part of that question is, at what point can we be 100% recycled? And that is making sure that there's actually no virgin content going into the supply chain at all. Now, I think that side of it's slightly more difficult to answer at the minute where we are today. There's debate over whether that's actually taking sustainability in its entirety through, commercial viability, other areas of sustainability like keeping quality at the level that it needs to be. We're probably not quite there yet. You know, if the entire industry exclusively survived on waste from end of life, we're probably not there yet. But there's a lot of development in areas like chemical recycling, which is another one that you mentioned, which is technologies around chemical recycling are going to be a really big picture around ensuring that the industry can go fully circular. And that's all around keeping the quality of feedstock up. So we've incorporated chemically recycled PET into our supply chain about 18 months ago. And it's a great feedstock because it does just top up the quality of the entire circular loop material. But I mean, we're still probably a few years off. I think, you know, over the coming 5 years, I think it's certainly going to be the case that we will see virgin material coming into the tray supply chain and the bottle supply chain. But at the same time, you're still going to have a petrochemical industry where those materials are out there, and actually it's right to use them. It's right to look at how we totally get rid of them, but the reality is that the petrochem industry will still have output of the materials that end up as plastic ultimately. The important thing is to make progressive steps to get those input percentages lower and lower over the course of the next few years, and ultimately as chemical recycling really, you know, ramps up and pilot scale becomes commercial scale, then I think that's the piece that'll really close the loop.
Excellent. Thanks, Jonny. So the first question we've had submitted is, did you set out to become a sustainable business by design, or was this an evolution?
No, we absolutely did. I mentioned, you know, we set out to challenge the big players in our industry, and we set out with 4 core pillars, and they were quality, innovation, customer service, and sustainability. You know, that was a big part of our business plan. The amount of focus on that 4th pillar probably changed significantly between us writing our first business plan and actually, you know, going live in the market. So we set the business up right around the time that the focus on plastic waste was really ramping up. But actually, what it did for us, it provided a huge opportunity because all of a sudden, as a newcomer in the industry, with a big focus on sustainability, there was a great opportunity there, which previously, you know, 10 years previously, there might not have been. You might have had to compete in other ways, you know, ultimately purely on cost or innovation. But actually, if you could combine the innovation piece with sustainability, and that's what, you know, 99% of our R&D and innovation is around how to make products more sustainable. Absolutely get the cost impact of a more sustainable product. Ultimately, a lighter product is more sustainable, less materials used, and ultimately cheaper. But no, we absolutely set out in that way. It probably accelerated as we set the business up.
Real. Thanks, Jonny. So the next question is it more expensive to move into sustainable production?
In some areas, yes. In some areas, no. As I mentioned just there, so quite a good lead in. A lot of our sustainability drives are almost natural progressions because, you know, using less energy means lower energy bills. So anything you can do to minimize your energy usage is great from a sustainability perspective and from a cost perspective. You know, some of those technologies, if you look at, you know, putting a wind turbine on your land, you know, they can be pretty expensive projects, but it's the way that you do them and the technologies that you employ. Again, for us, a big one's around eliminating laminates, components, material usage. All of those things cost money. If you can take a non-recyclable mixed material soaker pad out of your tray and design in a feature into the base of your tray that actually locks the liquid in without need for that, you're taking cost out immediately. If you can remove laminates, so sealing layers, for example, you're removing cost. So I think in most areas, it's actually the opposite. You know, you can have numerous projects that help from a cost and a sustainability perspective.
I suppose the flip side of that as well is you're designing better products by nature, which are more attractive, you know, to your client base too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool. Right, so the final question of the day for you, Jonny, is, so what's the one tip you would give someone looking to move into a more sustainable way of doing business?
I think it's it's to do what you really believe in, actually. You know, sustainability now, you know, I think there's a lot of companies where it's a marketing piece. But I think the key for me is to be on a sustainability journey that you really believe in, that you can, you know, put really good data behind, you know, that is genuine with real positive outcomes. Avoid at any cost anything that is greenwashing or could be seen as greenwashing. Avoid being greenwashed. Avoid, you know, knee-jerk reactions that might at face value look like a sensible thing to do, but you know, if you've got to really understand any changes that you make, because what we see in our industry an awful lot is that there are changes that whether for commercial reasons or genuinely well-intended sustainability reasons, you know, actually very quickly get uncovered as being potentially a step in the wrong direction. So I think the key is to really understand the steps that you're taking, and understand them and believe in them, that they are the right thing to do.
Excellent, Jonny. Thank you. That was very insightful and fascinating at times to know how, you know, the specifically things like how, you know, the trays I get my chicken on from the supermarket originate from bottles in Asia. So it's really interesting, and it's great to know that you know, companies like this exist, and entrepreneurs like yourself exist out there who are delivering good growth to investors such as myself, you know, whilst ensuring that, you know, protecting the environment, protecting stakeholders, protecting employees, and sort of delivering upon this whole, you know, sustainable business metrics. That's great. So that's all we have time for today, everybody. So thanks again to Jonny for that really unique and insightful talk upon what's happening at iPac. And yeah, and that's us for today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.